Good morning. It's March 2nd. This is to my liberal friends. The Supreme Court is now considering the issue of President Biden attempting to cancel certain amounts of student debt. The issue before the court is whether the president has the power to make these financial decisions. No matter how you feel about students having to repay their loans, the issue before the court is more of a constitutional one. It would set a dangerous precedent, and that is why several justices sharply questioned Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar. I found it somewhat amusing and disconcerting that Ms. Prelogar went to the emotional appeal in her closing. She pivoted from making legal arguments, which is all she should be making before the court, to an emotional appeal about the, quote, tens of millions of student loan borrowers in this country, end quote, who would be financially harmed. According to Ms. Prelogar, the harm would be even more financially because the freeze on payments will then end. 90% of the borrowers covered by Biden's plan make less than $75,000 or less, she said. 26 million Americans have applied for debt forgiveness and 16 million have been approved. And yet she has no answer for why the thresholds were then set so high. Under the Biden plan, you can have student loan debt canceled if you make up to $125,000 if you're single, and if your family income is up to $250,000. If her point about 90% is making less than $75,000, then why not lower that threshold to something like $70,000? And if you're curious about how much this will cost taxpayers, the Congressional Budget Office estimated the plan would cost about $400 billion. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, a nonprofit, put the cost of forgiveness at about $360 billion. Chief Justice John Roberts raised what he called the fairness argument. This has been a common criticism from those opposing President Biden's student loan debt program. They've argued that it punishes those who work to pay off loans or didn't take any loans. Roberts introduced a hypothetical situation of two high school graduates, neither of whom could afford college. One took out a loan to attend. The other started a lawn care business with help from a bank loan instead of going to college. Roberts pointed out that he knew statistically that the person with a college degree would normally do better financially over the course of life than the person without. Then Roberts said, quote, and then along comes the government and tells that person, you don't have to pay your loan, end quote. He then pointed out that the person who did not go to college and started that hypothetical lawn care business would still have to pay off their business loans. Quote, even though his tax dollars are going to support the forgiveness of the loan for the college graduate who's going to make more over his lifetime, end quote. Listening to the justice questions of Solicitor General, it became apparent that the conservative justices were looking at the overall issue as well as the constitutional aspect of the issue. But to me, it remains the constitutional issue of who has the power to make these kind of decisions. On the other side of the equation, Justice Elena Kagan and the newest member of court, Ketanji Brown Jackson, seemed to be buying into what they felt was fair. Both of them, in my opinion, seem to view the court as a place to shape society to their viewpoint as opposed to interpreting the Constitution, which is their job. If you follow the discussion held in the court, you soon realize that the issue being discussed within the case is the, quote, major questions doctrine, end quote. Under that doctrine, courts can invalidate regulations that have a major effect on the economy and are a matter of great political significance and are not explicitly authorized in the law, though no one is entirely sure how to define those terms. The Biden administration says the doctrine doesn't even apply in the student loan case because the law, they say, is clear on its own. Plaintiffs disagree. Hence, we're in the courts. The same doctrine was used in 2021 to prevent Biden from extending an eviction moratorium tied to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Supreme Court struck down the moratorium, ruling Congress couldn't have contemplated the law, leading to a halt of evictions. This was where Justice Kavanaugh seemed to hang his hat. His comments lead me to believe that he would vote to strike down this debt cancellation. Congress, Kavanaugh said, quote, could have referred to loan cancellation, end quote, in the law. But it didn't. Instead, Kavanaugh said the administration relied on general language in an old statute to create a massive new program. This seemed problematic under Supreme Court precedent, Kavanaugh said. Why does this not fit into that formula, what we've seen before? His vote will be critical since he is considered to be one of the moderates in the middle of the court, similar to his mentor and predecessor, Anthony Kennedy. And if you recall, President Biden had earlier said he did not have the power to cancel student debt. But as the midterm elections got closer and closer, he suddenly seemed to think that power was within his grasp. I suspect that his advisors told him that will help get young people out to vote for Democrats. The president has turned this into somewhat of a racial issue by making a statement during a celebration of Black History Month at the White House, telling students that, quote, he has their back, end quote. The point I'm trying to make today is that Biden used this student debt issue as a political wedge. He knew he did not have the power to cancel that debt. There is a reason Congress prohibited getting rid of student debt in a bankruptcy proceeding. Every student was simply borrowed to the maximum allowed, and 2 months after graduation, they'd file for bankruptcy. Congress created the student loan program, allowed the federal government to take total control of it, and only Congress can change the rules of student loans at this point. The taxpayers of this country should not be saddled with another $400 billion in debt so Biden and Democrats can try to buy votes from young people. It's been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, recommend it to your friends and hit the subscribe button.